Welcome back, everyone, to Fish Scales and Shrimp Tails. So today, I want to do something a little bit different. This is going to be an update video, but this is also going to be a video about tank transitions or tank types, or where your tank may be in its maturity and what to expect. I was thinking the other night, I've come to a point with the 5 tanks that I have here in the basement that I've showed you, where all of these tanks are kind of at a different point in their life cycle. And it's important to recognize these things and to understand what's happening as each tank transitions into a different sort of place in its cycle. And I thought I would talk about that today because I have a good example of all of them going on. So I'm going to film an update for each one of these tanks, and I'm going to try and release this in order from newest to oldest, so you get an idea of how a tank matures and what to expect. Now that means that some of these updates might come out a little close together from the last time that you saw a video on the tank. I do apologize for that, but I think it's a worthwhile thing to do. So what we're looking at here is the Blue Dream shrimp tank that you saw set up a little while ago. We're just zoomed in on one of the autos and one of the shrimp that are in there. We'll get to that. I recognize what you're all thinking. That's not a blue sapphire. That looks more like a Rilly. I know. We'll get there. So I'm going to zoom back out so I can give you an overall look at the tank, because I'm sure you want to see how this tank has matured, and we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll get into sort of what I really wanted to talk about today with regards to tanks and how they mature. So we'll do just a short pan around the tank, and you'll see all the atria, all the red atria that we planted in sort of sideways. I haven't trimmed any of this back. I haven't added any cuttings to this area here. Now there are new plants in the rest of the tank. This is just what developed out of that sort of sideways method of planting. And I'm going to do some trimming on this tank and replanting, but I wanted to be fair with everybody so I could show you how that turned out. And it turned out pretty good, to be honest. Now, the overall tank has got kind of an odd look to it, and that's because it was done with bits and pieces and leftovers of what I had around the house before I disappeared away on vacation. So it's not the prettiest looking tank, but it wasn't meant to be the prettiest looking tank. It was meant to be functional, and that's why we got the rock piles going on. We got some Java moss in here, and we just keep planting it down and planting it down. So okay guys, so here's what I want to do. I'm going to leave this stationary here while I ramble on. I want to have a conversation with you about different stages of a tank's life cycle and what you should be looking for. So let's go back. This tank, let's go back to when we started. This tank is about a month and a half old now. I'm just trying to remember when I was away on vacation. So yeah, it's got to be about a month and a half. Yeah, about that. About a month and a half old. So where are we? What do we call this? Well, so we went away on vacation, and if I remember, I'm going to put a short video clip up of what this tank looked like when I was done. It was very, very barren, and I disappeared away on vacation. And that created a bit of an issue. But it's a good thing, because we're all going to see what happens and what to expect in a new tank, or what I would call more of a... It is a new tank, because you'll get this in a new tank, but I'd call it more of a transition phase. So, having seen that clip, you'll notice that it was very, very lightly planted. There weren't really a lot of plants in here. There wasn't really a lot of floating plants. There weren't a lot of stem plants. There wasn't a lot of moss. There wasn't a lot of anything. It was a couple of random clippings of stuff I had floating around that I trimmed out of other tanks, a little bit of sage, and tossed in some rocks, and off I went. So here's the problem that happened. I always try to be honest with you guys and my successes and my failures, the things I do right, the things I do wrong, and that sort of led us to where we are today. It was sort of a tank in transition. It's a new tank, and it's got some working out to do. So what happened? Well, because it's a dirted tank, and because I didn't take the time to plant it heavily enough, when I went away on vacation, I didn't have any fish in here. I didn't have any shrimp in here. I actually taped the lid closed so that my brother-in-law didn't accidentally put food in here thinking there was fish in it. So there was no added food put in. There was no fertilizer added. This was the water and the dirt and the sand and the rocks and whatever plants I had in here for a week, and I took off. So I came back, and now, granted, not a ton happened in the first week, but enough to give me a clue that the tank was somewhat out of balance. Started to get some fuzzies on the rocks. The Java moss got pretty thick, and in some places still is, with hair algae. The plants got kind of thick with hair algae, and if you look, if I go in on the back, if you look at the filter's got hair algae growing off of it, right? So, indication that something's not right. So this is your typical new tank or transitioning tank. One of those signs is always going to be algae. In a natural aquarium, Mother Nature always tries to find a balance. And if you have too much of something going on, you'll find Mother Nature takes a big swing at it the other direction. So when I left, I had far too much nutrition in this water for the plants that were in here. So what happens? Mother Nature says, oh, we need to fix this. Here's some algae. And off it goes. And we had a pretty good hair algae issue going on in here at one point. Just a week or so ago, we had some pretty big balls of algae going on in here. So what does that mean to you or to me as the fish keeper that's looking after the aquarium? Well, we need to recognize what's happening. We need to recognize that this is a new tank. Its ecosystem is not developed. It does not have the ability to deal with big changes in the environment. It hasn't built up the microbiology or the ecosystem to digest as much nutrition in the water. So little things that go wrong are going to have a big impact on what's happening in the tank. And that's sort of a transitional tank. So that little bit of extra nutrition that was in the water created a pretty big hair algae issue. And I've had to get in here a few times now with a toothbrush and swirl it around and yank it out. And if you look in the back here, I still have some water wisteria or water. Somebody tell me what this actually is. If it's water wisteria or if it's water sprite. Doggone it, I should really Google that and find out for myself, so I quit calling it by the wrong one. But you guys know what I'm after. So there's a pretty big snot ball of that in the back. So I've had to come in here and I've had to take some of the rock pile out and scrub it down under some hot water to decrease the amount of algae that was growing off of it. I've had to twirl a toothbrush around through the plants in here to pull some of the hair algae out. I'm going to have to pull that sponge off of the filter in another month or so and give that a good scrub down or replace it to get rid of the hair algae. So I've kind of created my own issue. But you have to recognize what's going on. Because it's a new tank, because I didn't have it heavily planted, I definitely created my own path to algae. Now, am I getting control of it? Well, yeah. Am I using chemicals? No. Not in a natural aquarium. That's not what I'm looking for. The more chemical you put into your water, the less microbiology, the less of an ecosystem you have, and the more you depend on more and more chemicals. And that's not what I'm after. I want nature to do the job for me. I want to just sit in front of the tank and enjoy it. So, you could go out, you could buy CO2 booster, which is that I'm sorry, it's all the same chemical, guys. I don't remember exactly what it's called. I think it starts with the G. It's a big, long sort of Latin name, whatever it is. It's supposed to kill algae if you dose it every day. Yeah, okay, I could do that, but I'd rather not rely on a chemical to take care of a problem that I created and I'm relatively certain that Mother Nature can fix for me. So what have I done? Well, obviously there's a lot more plants in here than I planted a month and a half ago. That's because I've taken several cuttings of water wisteria and I've tossed it in here now, and I know you can't really see through it. Oh, you know what? Look at that. If I zoom in right now, there is one of my blue shrimp, and I guess you probably can't tell from this angle now that she's decided to move around. She is buried. Actually, you can see her. She's fanning those eggs. She is buried. She's one of a couple in here that I think are buried. Excuse me, guys. Which is great because this tank is only a month and a half old, and already they're starting a breeding cycle. So this is great news for me. So that tells me everybody's happy and pretty healthy in here, even if I don't feel like the tank is at a stable point yet. In the back, it's harder to see. I've taken clippings of the temple grass from my other tanks and dropped them in. And then you'll see some of these ones down here with this stalk with a couple of big leaves and then this smaller growth. This is the Hygrophila coriambosa I've tossed in here. They're clippings I took from the last maintenance session I did on the red cherry tank and a little bit on the Sunkist tank. I've added some water sprite in the back. I've tossed in some more Java moss. There's even some what is that, foxweed? Oh, for crying out loud, I don't remember what any other day I could tell you what the stuff is called, and now for some reason the name escapes me. Foxtail? I don't even know where it came from. Must have come in a bag with the shrimp I got or something, but I've tossed it in here. So this is how we're dealing with the too much nutrition in the water in a natural way. We've recognized what the issue is. We've tossed a bunch more plants in here to start absorbing the nutrients out of the water and accelerate that growth, and that will give a lot less nutrition available for the algae to grow, which is what we don't want. And as long as I keep up on ripping some of it out here with a toothbrush, I'll get a handle on it eventually. It'll take a little bit. It's not a lot of maintenance, but I do have to get in here probably once a week at this point, which is a lot for me, and pull out some of the hair algae just to try and get control of it. But that's how I want to deal with this tank. I want a natural tank. I don't want a tank that depends on me constantly changing water and adding chemicals and heavy filtrate. That's not what I want to do. I want a peek into that underwater world as close to a natural environment as I can do. I mean, I'm not going for biotope tanks, but I do want a natural environment. You know what, guys? Maybe we can zoom in right now before she takes on off. And you can see, there she is. She's got a bunch of eggs going on there. And actually, it looks like those eggs are... It looks like she's had them for a while. It looks like they're pretty well developed. So we might have some baby shrimp in here in the next couple of weeks. She's got a lot of eggs in there too. So that's great news. Okay, so back to what I was saying. So a tank in transition. So this is what to expect. New tank. Not a lot of plants in here to uptake that nutrient level. There really isn't any ecosystem in here, so to speak of. There isn't really a lot of microbiology happening in here yet. There isn't really a layer of mulm or anything on the ground or in the rocks. It's just barely getting started. We're just barely starting to see what this tank might one day turn into. And as it matures, I'm sure we'll have to make some changes to it to just sort of be able to see into it. But this is how we develop a natural tank, is by letting it be as much as humanly possible. Now, at the beginning, like I said, it's going to require a little bit of work on your part, a little bit of work on my part. I got to get in here with the hair algae because I've created that issue. I've let I know for a fact, oh, I hate duckweed. I know for a fact that somehow there's duckweed in here. There really isn't very much. But I am leaving it alone at the moment because it is helping me solve the problem. One of the best ways you guys can solve an algae? No. Let me rephrase that. It is not the best way. But if you have an out of control algae problem that you cannot get your hands around, put some duckweed in your tank. You'll get your hands around the algae problem really quick, and then you'll have to deal with duckweed. But the duckweed will outpace the algae growth by magnitudes. And that's kind of why I'm leaving the duckweed in here. It's also giving me an indicator of how much nutrition is still left in the water. After I came back from my vacation and I recognized what was happening and I put in a bunch more of these plants, I saw that duckweed there and I thought, well, I could pull it out. But if I leave it and I watch how rapidly it multiplies, it'll give me an idea of how close to balance I am. If the duckweed continues to multiply at a really rapid rate, then I know I'm not anywhere near balance and I need more plants in here absorbing the nutrients that are coming out of the tank. If the duckweed really doesn't progress at a rapid rate and it's a slow, moderate growth, then I'm getting pretty close to balance, and all I've got to worry about is pulling some of that hair algae out from time to time. And that's kind of where I find myself now with this tank. There is duckweed in here, but it's actually multiplying at a pretty slow rate. You really don't have to get in here very often to look after it, which tells me that although there is hair algae in here and it is growing, it's not growing as fast, and there isn't as much free nutrients in the water for it to take up. So these new plants that I've put in here are doing the job. And we're getting close to finding that balance. And I imagine as these plants mature and they start to grow a little faster and this Java moss starts to pick up, I imagine our problem with the hair algae will completely disappear. Now, an unstable or transitional tank does not mean that the ecosystem is unhealthy or that the fish are sick. It simply means that it is undeveloped. You're still very much relying upon your intervention. And by that I mean your filters, your air stones, your maintenance of pulling out, hair algae if you see it, and regulating how many floaters are in the water and that sort of thing. That's what I mean by a transitory or new tank. There's obviously something that has upset a balance in a transitory tank, and there's something that you need to find a solution for. And hopefully you find that without adding chemicals to your tank, because that's not how we want to keep a natural aquarium. That's not how you're going to develop any kind of biodiversity or microfauna that is going to make your tank a stable or a mature tank. So that's where we're at, guys. It is sort of in a transition phase right now, although I think I'm getting my hands around it. The fish are very healthy in here. The shrimp seem to be doing well. They seem to be breeding. The quality, guys, of the shrimp that I got was really poor. There are some exceptions. There are some males and females in here. If I zoom in down here right now, we'll get a good look of one of them here. I believe that is a male, actually. That is kind of the quality I'm looking for out of all of them. It's going to take me some time to get there because what I got looked like a mix of blue jelly, blue sapphires, slightly really-ish. Geez, did any of that make sense? It's not the level of quality I was looking for. They came from a local breeder, and I didn't get a good look at them in the containers that she gave me until I put them in here and realized that they're really kind of a poor quality. And I've pulled some of the worst ones out, so we'll make do with it. It's probably going to take a good year or so to try and breed out the lines that I don't want. I might even actually go buy from a pet store some good, clean, dark females and pull out some of the less desirable ones in here I have already, just to try and push that line along a little bit faster. There are some good quality ones in here, but I think the majority of them are not fantastic. We did introduce some snails in here. The store did not have any mystery snails at the time, so there's just a couple of neorites in here. I will say, I've recently had 2 of my mystery snails die for unknown reasons. And the third one, which is in the Sunkist tank, I'm not sure they're doing too well either. So the only one that's really healthy is the one that's in the live bear tank. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I almost wonder if it's a lack of food for the snails. There's not a lot of algae in these tanks anymore. And mystery snails aren't big on eating live plants. They mainly eat dead or decaying plants. So not sure what's going on there, but I'm not going to replace them at this point. However, so that's where we are, guys. Transitional, new tank. This is what to expect. A little bit of algae growth, a couple of underlying smaller issues. Should be easy enough to take care of with a little bit of maintenance, a little bit of interpretation of what's happening in your tank. You need to sort of have an objective look at it every now and then, and instead of looking in to see all the you know, how things are developing and how things are going and excited about what's going on, you need to take an objective step back and say, okay, how is this tank performing? What does it look like? Do I have anything I need to be concerned about? So this is what to expect out of a new transitioning sort of tank, a tank that's transitioning from that new phase of its life where it really doesn't have any ecosystem into a tank that's starting to develop one and is maybe becoming more stable. And I think that's the tank that we're going to talk about next. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I hope it's taught you something among my rambling here. I hope you've enjoyed that, and we'll talk to you guys in the next one.